Many companies offer their staff the opportunity to participate in their employee share schemes, providing shares, stable securities or rights, including options, in the company that they work for. Usually, the equities or rights are purchased at a discounted price. Graham Colley joins us today to discuss employee share schemes within an SMSF context. Welcome, Graham.
Thanks, Christine.
Generally, how does an employee share scheme work, and do many SMSFs do it?
Well, an employee share scheme works on sort of three bases. The most common one, I suppose, is the one where you've got the option to take shares or options in the employer, and often people will include that in their assessable income in the first year. Now, there are discount arrangements that apply there for the first $1,000 worth of shares that go in, that you get as part of that share scheme. The other ones is deferred arrangements, that the way in which that's assessed to the individual is not until they decide to transfer those over and things like that. Now, how many is in a self-managed superannuation fund? I really couldn't tell you, because you don't get that information from the regulators. There would be quite a number of them, because many public companies employees there would be transferring their shares into their self-managed superannuation fund when they get that opportunity.
And what do trustees need to be aware of before participating in an employee share scheme?
Well, I think the first thing they need to be aware of is that it's the employee who makes the option, makes the election to transfer those shares to an associate. Now, you've got to be careful that they are listed shares that go to the superannuation fund, because if they're unlisted public company shares, or if they're private company shares they're unable to meet the in-house asset rules, for example, then they're not able to be transferred into the self-managed superannuation fund. So what you're basically seeing is listed public company shares, the big banks and the employees who would get the share bonuses out of that, or any other listed company, or those companies where the person may have a high proportion of the shares amongst related parties. Then that meets the in-house asset rules under Part 8 of the SIS legislation, and they could transfer those shares to the superannuation fund, providing the in-house asset rules were met.
And under an employee share scheme, what can and can't be transferred to an SMSF?
Well, I think I've just covered that, but have a look at the ATO website, because they've got some excellent information on ESSs and also transferring the shares to the self-managed superannuation fund. Now, the types of shares that can be transferred are only public company listed securities as defined under Section 66, and making sure that they're listed on a stock exchange somewhere in the world and meet that definition of listed security. The other investments that can be transferred are those that meet the definition of an in-house asset, and making sure that after the transfer's taken place that they do meet the in-house asset rules. Now, with it, one thing that you need to be careful of is that the value of those shares that are transferred to the superannuation fund, and I refer there to the value of the shares to the super fund, they are regarded as personal contributions to that superannuation fund. So you need to work that out in the context of, well, usually non-concessional contributions in relation to that.
Great. And just on that, the shares or options must be acquired at net market value. Can we delve a little deeper into some of the issues or challenges surrounding the valuation of the share?
Yeah, particularly with options, what we've seen there is that the options will be granted at no cost to the employee, and then the employee thinks that those options have got no, well, I wouldn't say no value, but they've got no price for which you would transfer them. But making sure that they do have a value, because they will, even if they're in public company shares, for example, or the options are over public company shares, they will have some sort of value there. So you need to work out what that market value is when you transfer that across, even though the employee may have got them for nothing. Same with private company shares and private company options. There may need to be a valuation of the private company shares to work out what their true value is that goes over to the superannuation fund, and the same with the options in those private companies.
Do employee share schemes continue to be on the ATO's radar due to some of the potential breaches of super rules that could arise?
Yeah, I only this week, after you asked me to do this interview, I spoke to a number of auditors. And they were telling me that when they audit the superannuation funds, they look at some of these shares that come in at no value, and they say, well, does it really have no value, or does it have a value? And people are assuming that because there's a direct transfer of those shares from the company to the superannuation fund, then there's no problems with it. They're not contributions and they don't have any value. So that's the main issue around that. It's the valuation issue, and it's the fact that some of those shares can't be transferred to the superannuation fund because they're a breach of Section 66, the acquisition of assets rule.
And is there anything else that trustees or SMSF advisors need to be mindful of?
I think that having a look at the actual share arrangement, I mean, that's a tax agent issue or tax issue with the particular client, so there's an income tax aspect of that. There's also the capital gains tax issue and the valuation of that market value, and I think they're the main things that I see with those arrangements.
Great, thanks for joining us, Graham.
Thanks, Christine.